Welcome to my apiary. Today I have my lovely helper here. She has volunteered to build some frames for me, and she's doing really great. She's built probably 50 or 60 frames so far, and that's really wonderful because we're going to need quite a few frames this summer. And while she's doing that, I've turned my attention to my radial arm saw. And you may or may not recall from the last installment that the tabletop has not been bolted down. The saw has not been bolted down to the table, to the cabinet, and also the table has not been cut. So I'm going to attempt to cut that here today, and I'm pretty nervous about it because I have to make sure I get the depth just right, or not too short for sure. This is a really nice tabletop. It's a 1-inch thick pressed material with a melamine top and a nice edge on it. Friend gave that to me for my radial arm saw. He's a wood shop guy too, so he had that sitting in the corner and he said, "Hey, I got a nice tabletop," and so we brought that over here, and I think it'll be perfect for this job. Some of the calculations I had to make were related to my fence, how high my fence will be to meet the blade. And of course the blade is a circle, so that the higher you go on that, the farther out toward myself the fence would be. So I had to kind of approximate that, partly because the blade will ultimately be buried in the table a little bit, not very much, probably 1/4 of an inch tops. And then I wanted to approximate where this would end. And I don't want a ton of table out in front here, because I want to be able to see the markings on my fence gauge. But I want it to come far enough out here because you don't want that becomes unsafe if you make the table too short. Then it becomes unsafe with the saw coming out here too close to your person. So that's what I need to accomplish. I've done those measurements and calculations, and it seems to me that 21 inches is my measurement. Okay, so here's the tabletop. This offers me one little challenge here because there's a scallop out of the corner here. I think that's actually going to work for me. I think it'll be a nice feature on the saw. However, I can't just run this edge against the fence and cut 21 inches. So I've got two options here, and you know me well enough, I'm going to take the easy one. And one option is to build in a sort of a straight edge, and I'll use this for example. I wouldn't use this, I'd use a 2x4 or something, and the straight edge I would affix to the table thusly and have it extend right to the end of where I would be cutting. So then this straight edge would be part of this tabletop, and that would run along the fence. And that's a really great way to do that. I'm not going to do that, and that's because the length of this, or the width of this table, doesn't need to be bang on exactly any particular measurement. 21 inches is what I want, and about 21 inches is good enough. I always say good enough isn't good enough, but in this case it is. So I'll make that measure. That's where I want to cut. Since the back edge is straight, then I can see that that's 9. No, that's 8. And, that's just about 8 and 13/16 there. And you're asking, well, why don't I just make that side the front? And I think you can see why. This is because this is kind of a desk or something. It has cutouts for cable management. I'm not sure I could use that on the front side of my radial arm saw table. So, I'm just going to cut that off, and then I won't have any holes in it. So I can go back down to 9 and 13/16. You know what? I'm going to round that up to 10. No, I'm not, because that'll make it narrow. I'm going to round that down to 9 3/4. That'll give me a little tiny bit more meat on my actual table that's left over. So now I need to spin this around, get the saw going, and make that cut. So I've got my saw raised appropriately. Okay, my helper is going to turn my saw on for me. All right, helper. I forgot to put my safety glasses on, but I can't reach them now. Okay, so that's the big stressful cut. It is what it is. I mean, if it's too wide, I could cut it again, but if it's too narrow, then too bad. And what I need to do before I can start with the tabletop part is I need to bolt this thing down. See, I've got some bolts just hanging through here, but they're not the right length or even the right style. But here are my proper bolts for this. So I just bought a bolt of the appropriate length and a flat washer for the head. But I bought a big flat washer for the bottom. Since it's going into this pressboard material, I wanted just a little more surface area to spread that stress out. Because there's only 4 bolts in this. I need to cut a few strips of maple. This is a nice hard maple. And I need to cut 3/16 thick strips. I'm not sure what my planer goes down to. You can do this on the planer. However, I found thin strips in the planer are not really that easy either. So I've come to the table saw. Now there's a problem in that when you rip a thin strip on the table saw, you get it in here and you're pushing your stock, and my push stick here is very narrow, but typically I can only cut something as narrow as 1/4 of an inch through there. You can see I've kind of skimmed the corner off of my push stick doing thin strips. So there's another way. And the other way, I don't like it as much, but it's what you have to do sometimes. And I can use my feather board for this. However, I'm going to use, this is normally how you use this feather board, but I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to use it this way. So I'm going to push that right up here. I think you can see what's going on here. I'm going to use my feather board, the back of my feather board, as not my fence, but my guide as to how thick my pieces are. And I again don't want the feather board to be up as far as the blade where it comes out of the table. I don't need it to be really that close at all. However, I'm going to put it reasonably close. I'll put my little measure. I want to do 3/16. So try to get that as accurate as possible. The accuracy of my piece, you know, if it's off a 32nd or something, it's not going to be that bad. Okay. So now I could take my maple, place it against that featherboard there, move my fence up here to kind of trap it. I can see the featherboard's not quite straight even. Okay, get that nice and straight. So this is one way. This would be an okay cut. I've got a workpiece trapped between this fixed point and this fixed point. However, this fixed point ends here before the blade. So once it exits the blade, then I've got nothing more than my workpiece between the fence, which is a normal operation. That looks correct. Maybe it doesn't look quite correct enough. I'm not really set up for doing it this way, as you can tell. To measure on the tooth, not on the metal part of the blade, well, the center of the blade kind of thing. Okay, I think that's good enough for what I need. There's another thing I could do here that could, I don't know that it would really offer me any additional safety. I could use this mag switch featherboard on there. I'm less comfortable with that, to be honest. It doesn't give me as much support back here. So I'm going to stick with the stock fence. Again, it's once it gets beyond this featherboard, I'm going to have nothing but a conventional cut anyway. So, all right, so we'll make that cut. See how that turns out. That's perfect. You see where I hesitated there. Maple and cherry wood burn really easily. That's not an issue for what I'm doing. This is a spacer, so you're never going to see it anyway. So this way you need to move the fence each time back over against your stop block. I think I need 4 of these. So that's just a little talk on how to make a safer thin strip cut. And they're way better kind of jigs for this, but I don't have one. I haven't built one. Generally people build them. But I thought, well, this will work great. It's nice and stable. And then that becomes your guide as to how thick, and you just keep that, moving that fence over to it to keep your workpiece going straight. While I was editing the video for this, I noticed that I completely neglected to get any footage of attaching the fence to the table. Now, that's not a very difficult situation, but I'm sure I recorded it. Maybe I didn't press record. So what we ended up with here is, well, we started with is the offcuts from the shelves that were in this cabinet that I've set this on. There were 3 shelves that came with it, and you can see how long they are. Very, very long shelving pieces. And for press board, you wouldn't want to put more than just, tea towels and mothballs on there. It was my brother who gave me this cabinet, and at the same time he was asking me to cut up some shelves for another cabinet that he had. And when he gave me this one, I looked in it and there was 3 shelves, and I said, why don't we just cut these down a bit to your dimensions? So that's what we did, and that worked perfectly. So now he has the shelves he needs, and I have offcuts that I've been using. And so what happened here was, I just cut this. I ripped this on the table saw to particular width, and stood it in behind this table, drove some screws in from behind, and then I put the maple edging on that I did get footage of. So that's really all that happened there. But I just apologize that part of the build disappeared, and so there's a gap. There's a gap in here. So we'll continue with the application of the maple strips now. I've once again removed the table from the radial arm saw, and I've cut these thin strips of maple because I just want to give this this fence an edge. It's just got this, it's press board, it's sawdust and glue really, and it just has a veneer on it. I thought that would make a pretty decent fence with the veneer, but the only thing this press board does for you is it's flat. They can press it into whatever dimension they want, and it's flat. It's pretty stable as far as warping goes. It's not stable if it gets exposed to moisture. It'll swell. This tabletop is also press board, sawdust and glue. So what I'm going to do with these strips, I'm just going to glue them on here all the way down, and I won't even bother to break it up at the center here. I've only broken this up at the center because I had 2 pieces of material here. I'm going to put this all the way down right over the center, and then the saw will cut that out, because after that my rails go on here, so that'll kind of line up with the middle. This is my flip stop to get things in order here. There we go. So this will sit on here like this. And then they call this the production stop. So it'll slide along. There's a little measuring tape that sticks to here, so I can calibrate the red line. This just lifts off to loosen that a little bit. And it'll just lift right off to move from side to side, or off altogether, as the case may be. These little screws are how I calibrate that red line. This flip stop is similar, however, it doesn't come off of here, so I'll have to just decide which way I want to go with that. Left or right. I can move it left or right, but I have to move to the end in order to get the T-bolt. This is a T-bolt that goes in this slot. so it can only come out the end. And it again has a red line indicator to line up with the measuring tape. And this is nice because if you're cutting, say, 2 different size parts, you can line it up like this, cut your short part, and then you can even just slide your long part under there and cut your long part, or flip it up to give you more freedom. A lot of times what happens is I'll be cutting this happens a lot with reclaimed lumber. If I have offcuts or something I'm using, I'll often want to square up one end, then cut it to length. But I want the end I square up to be against the fence. So then what I can do in that case is, don't forget, I'm standing behind this, so this is the table where I'd be standing. So what I can do is I can push this down, push it under that stop, square it up, pull it back, flip it around, then put the square end against my flip stop and cut it to length. So that's kind of handy too. So this is what I'm going to do. Just going to glue these on here. I'll use Titebond Original since this is not going to be an outdoor project. And I have some 3/4 inch narrow crown staples. And away we go. I have to be careful with the drips and the squeeze out. I don't want any mess along here, but I can clean that all when I'm done. I know you can't see the end off camera. I'm just going to flush it as well as I can by feel. And the little join here, the gap, you'll never see that. The final product. Now the mess. All the Titebond glues I use, Original and Titebond 2 and 3, which I actually use 3 more than anything else because I normally build outdoor projects. They're all water soluble before they set. Titebond Original is water soluble after it sets. Titebond 2. I always wondered about Titebond 2. Why would they make that? And I think that glue exists because that was what they had before they formulated Titebond 3. That's near as I can tell. I'm no expert. I didn't talk to them about it. But to me, it doesn't really make sense to produce Titebond 2 if you want a lesser expensive, high-quality, water-soluble glue, buy Titebond Original. If you want a waterproof glue, buy Titebond 3. I did buy some Titebond 2, but that was last year when I was having trouble getting Titebond 3. I did try Elmer's, and I quickly grew a passionate hatred for Elmer's waterproof glue. It was a terrible glue. Imagine if you get it on there, it'll stick, but it doesn't. It doesn't store well. It turns bad really fast, and that is not something I can say about Type On 3. It lasts for years. Type On will not tell you that Type On 3 lasts for years, but that's my experience. Now I can actually finish putting this on, and in like manner as well, because I can cut through this. It's aluminum. You can cut aluminum with your carbide blades. This track screws in from the back, this lip that goes down the back of the fence here. Then I drive these small screws through forward. Okay, directions say drill a hole in a 1/8 hole about an inch from the end through this thing. So I'll do thusly. Okay. And it says use 4 or 5 screws. For the next one, I just want to make sure that I get a screw kind of each side of this, the kerf cut here. It's not quite in there. As you can imagine, these rails need to line up perfectly so that the stops slide freely between them. Just going to mark this. I am setting up this saw so that the intention is to only cut square 90-degree cross cuts, because if you were to angle that saw, you may run into a screw in the fence. I'm not allowing for that. I don't intend to cut angles. One day I may regret that decision. Gonna be 6 screws in this one. My wife building frames. I don't have giant mice in my shop. So I'm back on the radial arm saw now. I'm starting to align it and put it together. What happens here is there's a spacer board behind the table, and then there's some thumb screws here. There's 3 of them that push this spacer board up against the table. And it's a little bit low tech. There's 4 screws that come through the rails here, these bolts here. I have to drill and countersink those into the table. And then I use those thumb screws to set up the square angle of the fence to the blade. But to do all that, I need a kerf through this fence, and I need to clean up the kerf through here. So what I need to do is start the saw, and I'm going to lock it in place so it can't move, and I'm going to start it and lower it through there. I've used my speed square here to line up the blade with this kerf. The blade is wider than this kerf, and even if I don't get it quite right, it's not the end of the world, because I'm not using this kerf as my be-all and end-all guide as to how or where my cut's going to happen on my workpiece. Even though I've locked it, I'm going to hold this, and then I'm going to lower the blade with the crank under the table. I'm wearing my safety glasses because this is going to shoot little pieces of aluminum everywhere. You can hear the run out in the blade. Run out is how accurate the blade runs through its circumference, so you can hear that it's touching in certain places. Okay, so this is what I wanted to see. And so making this first kerf in the table, which it will have an entire kerf this way eventually, and oddly enough, this whole project was instigated by the fact that there were too many kerfs cut in the tabletop, and my pieces were getting jammed in those as I moved them around. So this will have one kerf if I can help it. So that's a real rite of passage when you rebuild your tabletop, is your first kerf. So I'm going to raise that just so that the blade clears the table. And yeah, these guards are not really made for a fence that tall. I'm going to have to figure something else out for that. But you can see I've got a little bit of a problem here. So you can see that I have potentially a little problem. And that is that my blade, it's even higher than it would normally run. My blade is not very high where the fence is. So how can I remedy that? Well, before I drill my holes, I can move that fence a little, like so. That reduces the overall cut depth that I have. Run that forward and measure that now. How much cut do I think I have? Well, I probably have no more than 15.5 inches. If I raise it up 3/4, I have 16.5 to 17 inches, which 16 5/8 is what my 16 3/4 probably is what my covers are. So that would still be acceptable. All right. Well, again, these guards going to be a problem. I'll work that out. Now I've moved it and I can't get the saw back through the kerf. There we go. Okay, so I think that's my spot right there. For my next trick, what I'll do is I'll tighten these thumb screws up to give me a kind of a positive location on where that fence is. I will also disconnect the power. In the interest of safety. Okay, so these thumb screws are not exactly where they need to be. My next trick is I need to square the table. I need to square the fence with the blade. A tool I don't use often, but I'm glad I have, is my grandfather's framing square. That goes back a long way. So what I'll do is I'll get that square right on a tooth, hold it steady, okay, so I can see, let's see, what can I see? Boy, that is really close. I just eyeballed that, and that is as close as you're going to see. That's remarkable. And there is some give once I get it bolted down with the thumb screws, because these bolts aren't super tight in the hole. They have a little bit of wiggle. So you get that squared away, and then you tighten those down tight. I'm going to go underneath and mark the bolt holes. This is a part that's nerve-wracking for me, because I don't want to mess up such a nice table. I don't want a bunch of rogue holes and things in it. So what I need to do is drill a small hole here that goes through to the other side, so that then I can locate that and drill a countersink hole to accept the head of the screw. Then when that one is drilled, then I can drill this larger to accept the shaft of the screw. More than just not drilling into the table saw, I need to back up that drill so that it doesn't blow out the melamine on the far side like this. Oh, you can't see that. This is what I mean. You blow out the melamine, just cracks and makes a mess. So I'll put this under here. And then I can drill like that. And I can start with this drill bit's already chucked. I drew a circle. I didn't just make a dot, so I can see the entire circle of that hole in that bracket. So I can try to drill right in the middle of that. There's a seventh hole, and it's somewhere right here, but it's a different kind of a bracket. I could not draw a circle through the bracket, so I need to go measure where that is. I made this line here, so this line tells me where the hole is this way. The end of the line is right up to the bracket. I measured the bracket to the hole, or the end of the bracket to the hole, which was 1/2 inch. So my hole should be right about there. We will see. Okay, what's the other side look like? It's so heavy. 7 little holes. Imagine that. Okay, I looked through the tickle trunk and I found a drill bit that appears to be just about the same width as the diameter of that screw. That's 1/2 inch. Wish me luck. Doesn't have to be real deep. And that's just about deep enough. These can be made deeper at the end. As long as I've got that diameter, that bit will locate again in the right place. So I'm not making it real deep. I can make it deeper, I can't make it less deep. There's actually a washer goes on that too, so it does need to be made deeper. So for my next trick, I want this hole to be pretty well the diameter of that bolt. The hole in the frame is sloppy, so I want that to be where I get my adjustment. And so I've just lined up that bolt with the shank on the bit as an example. And it looks like that's more than big enough. I think it'll be fine. Okay, I've caused myself a problem. I drilled out my bolt holes, and the countersinks are the same size as the bolt head. I forgot there was washers need to go in there, and those washers are every bit of 3/4 inch diameter. So I've decided to step it up and drill a 7/8 hole, because they're really hard to get out of a 3/4 hole once they're in there. So here's my problem. I can't drill with that large pilot hole here. My spade bit makes a mess. So there's a different solution required. That solution requires sort of a template hole drilled in a piece of scrap here, placed over top where I want to make my countersink. Secure that nicely, and then this will locate the drill bit from kind of the outside of it instead of the center. And that works pretty good. So I have to do that 7 times. Pretty upset at myself for doing this. I worked special to make a nice job of these holes, and now they're just going to be not as nice. Not as nice as I wanted. I'm not really happy about how that turned out. I had to change strategy in the middle of the game here. What I had to do was put longer fasteners in. The only thing I had on hand was hex head bolts. And the reason is that with these shorter bolts, I had to drill so far through this material to make that bolt reach that I was, felt I was compromising the integrity here. So I've put some 1/4-inch bolts in here. That's what they are, so they lined up just fine. And I've tightened them snug, so now I need to fine-tune the square of the table again, and then tighten them down real tight. So it took a lot of experimenting, so I didn't have the camera rolling the whole time. And so that's where I'm at this point. That's as perfect as I can get it. Time to put the measuring tape on these. It's a metal tape actually, with an adhesive back. So this is a metal tape with an adhesive back, and it fits in that little track right there. Now, the idea is to get this in there at some accurate place. However, it's really not that important because these red lines on the stop are highly adjustable. So I've cut that right at 0. And I'm just going to stick it on there. I would imagine the guards flipping over that fence over and over will likely make a mess of this tape. But that's okay because you shouldn't be cutting things that small anyway. This tape is kind of the whole reason I'm doing this. The tape is not measured from the blade, the tape is measured from here. So if you get my long ruler off of that table saw.
This little one?
That's the short ruler. So what I can do is measure from the tooth on that blade 6 inches, actually 9 inches, to the stop.
Yeah.
Okay, then I can secure the stop. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to measure from the tooth. This is an accurate 12-inch ruler. I'm going to put the stop right against that ruler from the tooth. Okay. Now this is the indicator for the left side, and this is the indicator for the right side. And I can then slide this through under there, line this up with 12 inches, and Bob's your uncle. I'm going to cut this off at 1 inch. You don't need to be making cuts that are that small anyway. And you can't. You can't because the tape is graduated there. It just simply wouldn't work. Okay, we'll slide that in under there. I'll take some backing off from the end. Once I stick the end down, then it won't move endwise. Okay. Now, what I also want to do is this is adjustable as well. So I want to get that kind of in the middle of its adjustment. Okay. Get that red line on 12 inches. Hold that down. Stick the adhesive. Now I can take this off. And stick the tape down the rest of the way. I have to cut it off here, so I'm going to do that now. Okay, it's surprisingly difficult to get it in the little track. A little bit off and it sticks up on the side of the track. However, that's where we're at now. Well, this flip stop, the guide here on the flip stop, there's only a guide on one side, so really it's only going to be helpful on the left side of the blade. You can use it over there, but you'll be measuring by hand the old-fashioned way. What I'll do is I'll set this block here at 12. This T-bolt has to go in the track. That goes right up there. And now I can tighten the T-bolt. And now I can calibrate the red line. Done. Okay. I've got lots of tape here. How much tape did they give me? They gave me 12 feet of tape on each side. Okay, it looks like the radial arm saw is ready to be used. We've got the stop and track system set up. New fence. Got the fence squared to the blade, bolted down to the table, down to the frame. And the one thing I didn't do yet, I kind of tightened that one, but I didn't torque these thumb screws in the back. So I kind of just did. So that was the only thing left over. Yeah, I want to do dust collection, but that's not going to happen this season. What has to happen is I not only have to build a kind of a box back here for dust collection and then a spout to hook to the dust collector, but I want to cut part of this fence out, so this is going to have to be redone again and make slots in it. And the slots tend to collect a lot of the sawdust when you're cutting in this area. When you're cutting in the back, then it just blow back into the box. So I've seen a lot of those online. They seem to work really well. Anyway, that's the radial arm saw. I still haven't done the drawers under this, but you know, that's going to be a future project and probably next season because I'm really under the gun here and I needed this saw to do my work. So it's kind of set up now. It should help me do my work faster and more accurately. Thanks for following along with this epic journey, and watch for more videos in the future on this beautiful big old saw. Have a great day. Take care and have fun.